Greetings and welcome back. The Arnold vs. Stallone podcast. That's where we are. I know it's been a hot minute, but we are back. And today we have a pretty juicy episode. We've got two sequels fighting it out. Well, I know that's not true, but we have two sequels that I'll be discussing today. And yeah. So it's been a while, so I'm still kind of rusty on the old intro here. So so welcome to the Arnold vs. Stallone podcast. Real quick, this podcast is a love letter to the film careers of Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone. We're going movie by movie, and I'm going to talk about two movies today. And when it's all said and done, when the tallies have been tallied and the dust has settled, I will know exactly who I am a bigger fan of, Arnold Schwarzenegger or Sylvester Stallone. Today we are going to be discussing Terminator 2 on the Schwarzenegger side, and then we're going to go over to Rocky 5 on the Stallone side. But, as always, we're going to start out with the Rotten Tomatoes. We're going to start with Terminator 2 today because, what we got to get the good out of the way first. Well, okay, we shouldn't say that. I'll save my Rocky 5 for Rocky 5, but when it comes to Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, there really is none bigger than Terminator 2. I remember this movie from, obviously, when it came out. It was a big deal. As a kid, I never saw the first Terminator before seeing this one, just because I was at a time unable to watch, say, rated R movies. Family members decided that it was not very good for a developmental mind to watch rated R movies, because apparently I don't have the willpower to understand. If I see violence, I'm not going to do violence. But again, that's a story for a whole nother day. But so like I said, today is Terminator 2 Judgment Day, and then we'll be discussing Rocky 5. So for Terminator 2 Judgment Day, that is 1991. The Rotten Tomatoes is sitting at a 90%, and the audience is sitting at a 95%, which is not surprising because, like I say, this movie is a very popular movie. Here, I'll even do set the theme here for Terminator 2. Just starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, Linda Hamilton, Robert Patrick. We've got directed by James Cameron. This movie made a ton of money in 1982 money. And so it was, like I say, this was the summer movie. This was the summer movie from 1991. It was the year after my high school graduation. And we kicked it off with a little Terminator 2. So we'll let this, just absorb this. This is I guess, if this doesn't pump you up for Terminator 2, nothing I really can say can do that. So I'm going to go ahead and let you enjoy the rest of this. All right, so we got that out of the way. Terminator 2. Like I say, I saw this movie in the theater opening weekend. It was the first Terminator movie I ever saw. I loved the hell out of this movie. I've seen this movie many, many times. I had not seen it in quite a while. So just watching it recently, it's still a great movie. I still recommend it if you've never seen it. Start with the first one, because the first one definitely is the better of the two. I know when we talked about the original Terminator, we both had mentioned that Terminator, the original 1984 movie, was better than Terminator 2. At that time, I didn't really feel that way. Now, having watched both of these movies within the last year, I'm not taking anything away from Terminator 2, because Terminator 2 is a visually impressive movie. I mean, the special effects for this movie laid the groundwork for a lot of the special effects that we see nowadays that we kind of take for granted, really, in modern movies. And it was they had all, how can I say this? They owe it all. There we go. Gosh, it's like I've never talked before. They owe it all to Terminator 2 Judgment Day. So, but yeah, so let's go ahead and dive into a little Terminator 2 Judgment Day. I'm going to try to do justice here. I am running solo today, so I'll do the best I can. So I love it. This movie opened up in the near future of 2029, kind of like the first movie did, where we see the battle of the machines versus man. 1984's beginning was awesome. 1991's beginning is even awesomer, just because obviously the technology in 1991 was much more advanced than 1984. Not taking anything away from the 1984 version of Terminator, it still looked great. Still does look great to this day. This one still looks great too, but it was definitely a lot of things jumped out at me that I didn't really notice or chose not to notice on my many viewings of this movie. Didn't really take me out of it, but there's some certain things that I kind of noticed along the way that I was kind of like, And I think when we get there, I may bring them up then, or I may wait till the end. I don't know. I haven't decided yet. But so we start in the year 2029, which according to this, if Judgment Day is the predictor of the future, we're really only 3 years away from the war with the machines. Uh-oh, hold on tight. But yeah, we get a pretty kick-ass beginning where the Terminators are death marching across the fields, the barren wastelands of Earth, and just it's awesome. Lasers flying and Terminators crushing on skulls, and we get the Sarah Connor voiceover telling us about Skynet and bringing up a little bit about the original Terminator, where the Resistance is led by John Connor, and Skynet had sent back a Terminator to kill Sarah Connor, so John was never born, and obviously he failed, and so now they're trying again. And much like the first movie, we get two time travelers coming back again. Like the first movie, we were not sure who is who's the good guy, who's the bad guy. It starts out with our first time traveling visitor, which is Mr. Schwarzenegger. Again, up to this point, we don't know if he's good or bad. Of course, now if you've seen the commercials, you kind of know. But I'm gonna pretend you never have, and this is your first exposure to Terminator 2. But we get Mr. Schwarzenegger showing up from the future and saying "ball of light," and just shows up naked and just looking around his surroundings, trying to figure out where he's at, and wanders into a bar. And of course, he's naked, and you see the Terminator view where it's the red screen, and he's processing all this data and taking measurements of people, and he's looking at all the men, and they're not his size, and then he scopes over to the waitresses, and they give the big eyes, and oh yeah, look at that hammer he's hauling around, and finally he ends up on the one guy that fits his exact specifications. He's got the same height, the same build, the same shoulders, the same everything, and walks up to him and gives him the deadpan, "I need your boots, your bike, and your clothes." And the guy's smoking a cigar, playing pool. This is like a dive bar, and blows smoke in his face, and he's just like, "No, whatever." And then they get into a big old a bar fight, and he's just kicking ass and throws the guy through the window there into the kitchen, and he lands on the spider burners, and one of his buddies attacks Schwarzenegger with the pool cue and ends up getting his ass kicked, and he gets knifed through the shoulder onto the pool table, and he's all screaming, and Schwarzenegger makes his way back into the kitchen, and of course the guy's just ready. Okay, yeah, here, take it, and so he gets on comes out of the bar with the old Bad to the Bone riff kicking off, and goes over to the motorcycle and fires it up one shot, and bar owner comes out with a shotgun and shoots it off into the air, and does the old "I can't let you ride out of here," and you can't do this. And so then Schwarzenegger slowly kickstands the bike and gets off and walks up to the bartender, and just one fluid motion rips the shotgun out of his hand and takes his sunglasses out of his pocket and slowly puts them on, and boom, then we take off. So there's our first introduction to the first Terminator. Again, we don't know which one's which. And so then we cut over to the second Terminator, which shows up, and Same thing, back alley, ball of light, naked, and just happens a police officer kind of sees the lights show going off, thinking it's some sort of power surge or something, and then he gets killed. And so the second Terminator takes the, I guess, which again, this is I'm going to take the piss out of this for one moment. Is you would have thought it would have made more sense that he would have taken the form of the cop, but he just takes the cop's uniform, like he's wearing the uniform, which they show in the further in the movie. He can shapeshift into these other people without, taking any sort of physical clothing, but he can just automatically shapeshift. I thought it would have been cooler if Robert Patrick would have gotten out as just the normal everyday cop, and then he got, killed, and then the Terminator, the liquid metal is what he is later referred to, and would have just taken Robert Patrick's identity and just been that cop. I thought that would have been a little cooler. Again, I never really noticed that until now, and so I've actually coined a term. It's like, I'm going to start taking the piss out of some of this stuff. I'm not going to go too deep as far as like, well, that just makes absolutely no sense, because we're talking about time traveling Terminators, for God's sake. So yeah, that I thought they could have leaned into that a little heavier. So, but whatever. So now both of our Terminators are back, and they're looking for John, and boom, the race is on. So then we cut to Sarah, and she's in the insane asylum, just because of the whole Skynet and everything. And it's kind of funny. She is playing, or they have all these videotapes of her obviously saying, well, everyone's gonna get nuked in the year 2027 or 2017 or whatever it was. I didn't write it down. 1997. There we go. Yeah, there we go. I got a little more notes than I usually do, so I'll try to keep it as close to as I can to possible. 1997, August 29th is the Judgment Day, where Skynet becomes self-aware and decides humans are the problem, and he, as I gendered Skynet there. You man, of course you would. But Skynet, the ambivalently self-aware program, there we go. Yeah, like I'm going to remember that. Decides humans need to be eradicated and creates the robot army, and boom, humans are now fighting robots. So anyway, we're seeing Sarah. There's psychiatrists. They're showing her all these crazy, videos of her just ranting and raving of the end of times. And if you're not wearing 1 million sunblock, then you're going to be having a pretty fucking bad day, as she had said. And that's the nuclear fallout and all this. And as she's watching this, she's very remorse, just very subservient, just kind of like calm and collective. Well, as we come to realize a little further on in the scene, is the psychiatrist who was in the first Terminator, he is now her main psychiatrist in the second one, had promised her if her attitude had changed, or maybe she lightened up a little bit, then she would be able to get visitation rights, which as of now she does not have, because she's, in their eyes, a raving lunatic. And so she is now the yes woman, and oh no, I don't believe that. Oh yeah, that was a different Sarah Connor. That's not me anymore. And remember when you said that if I made significant changes in 6 months, I'd be able to see my son? And I feel I have. And the doctor, he sees otherwise. Like, well, I don't know. I think you're just kind of telling me what I want to hear. I don't really think that you really feel that way. You're just telling me what I want to hear. And so we're going to go ahead and keep you in maximum security. Which, okay, that was another part of it. They promised her minimal security facility, transferred to a minimal security facility. But nope. He sees through her rouge. She's stuck in maximum security, and okay, she doesn't really feel good about that, and then decides to just fucking, whatever. Okay, so then we're going to cut back to the young John Connor, who was actually, I forgot to leave, or I left him out unintentionally, of course, which is Edward Furlong. This was his acting debut, and as for a kid actor, I'll give it to him. He wasn't too bad. There's been some kid actors in movies that I'm just like, oh God, would you just go away? Or not that I'm rooting for anything bad to happen to kid actors, but this one, sometimes, yeah, it's just like, yeah, you just need to like wander off somewhere. Just go away. But he wasn't too bad. So we're introduced to John Connors. He's in his garage with Danny Cooksey. You may remember him if you ever were a kid in the 90s and you watched the fabulous show Salute Your Shorts on Nickelodeon. He was the redhead, long-haired redhead kid. He was also in the last final seasons of the Different Strokes. I believe that was in the late 80s. He was the cute little redhead boy, added to hopefully boost ratings, as a lot of TV shows back in that time did, when the shows were running long and the child actors were aging out of their characters. They needed to pump some fresh faces in there, and they would always add a little kid. Well, he was that for Different Strokes. So these two are in their garage. They're tuning up their little motorcycle, which I'm not a motorcycle guy, but this kind of had the sound of like a two-cycle lawnmower. And well, it turns out John's living with foster parents, and the foster mom's trying to get him to clean his room, and he's just like, whatever. And she goes inside bitching at the husband about, you need to go out there and tell John to, he needs to clean his room. And so the dad wanders out there, cigarette in his hand, and just, John, your mom, as they're, your mom wants you to clean your room. And he turns around, he's like, she's not my mom, Todd. They're like, ooh, yeah, that's a defiant little 12-year-old, 13-year-old, 14-year-old. I don't know. I don't think they say exactly how old he is, but he's a early to mid-teens boy. And so they burn off into the street with a boombox and Guns N' Roses playing overhead and just having the time of his life. I mean, that was 90s right there. That song, that Guns N' Roses song, "You Will Be Mine," obviously was done for this movie. It was very heavily included in the movie. I mean, God, even the music video that Guns N' Roses did had Arnold Schwarzenegger in it as the Terminator. So, yeah, so boom. Now we're all introduced to the... oh, no, I'm sorry, I left out one person. So we somehow get this weird scene as they're talking, or Sarah's scene in the psych ward. We cut to the scientist, who was played by, let's see, what was his, Joe Morgan, I believe. Was it? No, that wasn't Mr. Morgan. Joe Morton. Yes, Joe Morton. He's in his lab, and he ends up, they don't really tell us right away, but he is the inventor of Skynet, where he's in his lab doing his work, and for whatever reason, someone comes along and asks him for something. So, I don't know, a coffee. Well, he ends up going into the highly secured vault, pulls out the old chip from the Terminator and the old arm, the forearm of the original Terminator. That's encased in a nice little glass, I don't know, trophy case type thing. And so, boom, there's our, hey, remember this moment from Terminator, in Terminator 2. And because that was the other thing that they were telling Sarah, is like, well, if all this really happened, there was no proof. There was not, nothing in that smelter or wherever the hell it was. I think it was a smelter, a manufacturing warehouse or what have you, that even backs up your story to the slightest. So, yeah, we think you're full of shit. And so then, like I say, fast forward to John riding off with his buddy, and now we got every character's been introduced. And so now we cut to, we see the kids riding through the Los Angeles, they got those lower sewer, maybe rainfall, I don't know exactly what they're called, but they're the lower kind of caverns where I guess water runoff would go if the city were to be flooded or whatever. And they're riding through there and just rocking out to music and having a good time. And as they, you see them down below, you see Arnold's, because he's on the biker's motorcycle, he pulls up, he's up on the street level, and he sees them, and it's like, okay, so again, we're not sure who's who. And then it cuts to the boys. They have fantastic 90s software where they insert it into an ATM, and it automatically deciphers the code or the PIN number, which, okay, just some code on some sort of, I don't even know. This technology is so old. It just pops up the random number generator, and oh yeah, that's the PIN. Well, then how do they know which account they're getting into? Basically, they're just getting into the ATM without even, I don't know. Again, I'm going to take the piss out of this right now, which it's kind of like, yeah. And then of course his friend's like, well, how did you figure this out? And John's like, oh, my mom taught me. And it's just like, well, okay, well, how did you come across this? I don't remember Radio Shack selling this sort of stuff, because that's where you would have gone at that time. But whatever, again, I'm not going to well, we'll see. That's if you really look at it. No, that's not what I'm going to do here. But that kind of made me laugh. I mean, even originally seeing it, I was kind of like, right, really? You're just going to run through every single number, and then, oh, that's going to populate the 4-digit number to get yourself some free money. And of course, that's what free money. And okay, whatever. And then the friend kind of brings up his mom as far as like, oh, your mom seems pretty cool. And then he's like, no, man, no, mom's not cool. No, she's a complete psycho, man. Yeah. I don't even know why you brought her up. He's like, I'm thinking, well, you brought her up, really, dickhead. I was just saying, hey, that's pretty cool. Where'd you learn that? And yeah, no, man. My mom, she's in a psycho ward right now. No. So, but yeah. So there's my impression of John talking about his mom. So hope you enjoyed it. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and cut to the boys, like any boy at that time, was going to go to the mall. They're going to go to the arcade. I loved going to the mall arcade. I feel sorry for this generation nowadays where they don't get to experience the noise and the lights and just the overall gathering of kids and teenagers and just playing video games. And every game that they showed in this scene, I've probably seen and or played. I didn't dump a ton of money. I wasn't an everyday arcade goer, but whenever I had extra money that I wanted to kind of, give away, I always went to the arcade. And so they're just playing video games and just living it up. I mean, it flashes me back. That's why I kind of like watching movies from the past. It kind of holds that as like a time capsule of remember this, remember that. And video arcades are definitely something I will always remember. I was always a fan of video arcades, and so I think if you ever find a nostalgic video arcade, even if they only have pinball machines, man, go spend an evening there. It'll definitely take you back to a simpler time. So they're playing video games, and all of a sudden you see the cop Robert Patrick show up, and he's very just dead face cop, and before this he goes to the foster parents' house looking for John, and they're like, oh no, he took off this morning, and then he's like, well, do you have a picture? And she's like, yeah, here, take this picture. And Terminator looks at it and he's like, oh, this is a good looking boy, you mind if I keep this? And like, yeah, whatever, I don't care. That kid's just basically he's a social security check that we get every month. That's all. That's not what they say, but that's kind of the impression that they give. They're like, yeah, whatever, he's just our financial obligation right now. So then fast forward, now he's in the arcade with this picture and going up to different kids and, hey, have you seen this boy? Have you seen this boy? And, a lot of people are like, no, no. And as John and the boy, his friend are playing, and his friend has to go somewhere to get a drink of water or take a leak or something. I don't know. But he's like, I'll be right back. And okay. And John's playing Afterburner. Man, Sega Afterburner arcade game. That was, you sat inside a console. You can move it back and forth. It goes up and down. It's definitely, I mean, as far as like virtual reality, that was it. So he's just kicking ass in this game and just living it up. And as his buddy's coming back, that's when the cop just, goes up to him. Hey, have you seen this boy? And of course, his buddy, being the good buddy he is like, nah, man, I've never seen him, which bravo to him, because he could have been like, oh yeah, that's, John, he's right over there. But nope, he plays it straight. He's like, nope, I've never seen this guy before. Okay. And so then he takes off and beelines, goes right to John. Hey, John, man, there's a fuzz here looking for you, showing your picture around. And he's, checking you out. And John looks and sees the cop talking to another guy. As just luck would have it, the one guy that he's talking to, as John's looking at him, is like, oh yeah, I think he's over there. Points like almost right at him, his general vicinity. So then he's heading over, and John books it, and that's when his buddy comes over. Oh yeah, hey cop, I think I seen that kid. And cop just throws him out of the way. Just no big deal. Get out of the way, kid. And that was pretty funny. But so now he's John's running, the cop's behind him, and they end up there in the back of like when you go to the mall, and they end up one of the back hallways, and he's running from the Terminator, and just as he's running, all of a sudden you see Schwarzenegger walking through the mall with his big box of roses, and so he ends up in the back hallway as the kid's running, and he's almost he ends up at a locked door, and turns around, and he opens the door, and there's Schwarzenegger, and he's like, oh shit, because in the first Terminator, Schwarzenegger was the bad guy, and of course there's pictures, and watch out for this guy. They're still looking for him in 1991, and so he sees this, and he's like, oh shit, turns around, runs the other direction, and he ends up running towards the other Terminator, and now he's stuck. He's got one on one side and one on the other, and he doesn't know what the hell. He knows for sure this second one he's seen pictures, and I'm sure his mom has told him about, the horrible person that he is. And so then he's just like, and then slow motion, Arnold takes out the shotgun out of the box of roses, and, these roses are falling all over the floor, and he's stepping on them, and kid's just like, frozen in terror. And then Arnold's like, get down, and kid gets down, and he just, Schwarzenegger starts shooting the shotgun at the second, the cop Terminator. And again, pretty sweet little, because he's liquid metal, so he shoots him, and he, it hits and opens up a nice little wound, and it's liquid metal wound, and so he's shooting at him, and and then of course, being liquid metal, he has the ability to self-heal, and so he does. And then Schwarzenegger grabs the kid, and then they take off and get chased. And no, I'm sorry, before then he doesn't get the kid ends up getting away, and so kid gets on his little motorcycle and takes off. And then Robert Patrick, I will say, man, he got his cardio in for this movie. He was doing a lot of foot chases, and this was the first one, as he's chasing down John on his motorbike, which is the wink, 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 just going as fast as he can. He can't help it. And the second Terminator, the liquid metal, is just hot on his tail, just got the pace the 3-minute mile, man. That's what I'm gonna call it. He was doing the 3-minute mile and caught up to this kid, and kid takes off into traffic, and he's like, oh God, thank God. And then all of a sudden, just as luck would have it, a semi truck comes pulling in, on the road as John cuts him off, and the Terminator jumps in there and throws the guy out, which is a pretty sweet stunt scene, because you see the guy bounce off the road, and I'm just like, oh, geez. And I know it's 1991, and those stunts, man, that was real. That was a real guy bouncing off the freaking street at, 25, 30 miles an hour or so. Now the Terminator's in hot pursuit in this big old semi-truck. And again, I know we've talked about in the past where, these characters are able to get into whatever machinery they need to get into and can totally operate it without any sort of, like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. Yep, same here. He's a professional truck driver now at this point, and he's hot on his tails. He doesn't even grind the gears once trying to chase down John, so I'm going to tip my hat to that. Maybe he had that all uploaded as far as, semi-truck operation, and so he knew exactly what to do. And yeah, I've driven this late model kind of semi before. I know exactly how to drive this, so now he's chasing this kid on his little tiny motorcycle, and then we see Arnold kind of, he's coming up the rear on the big Harley, and they end up, it's a cool chase scene. I don't want to be like throwing shade on or anything. It's a pretty badass chase scene, because they end up running through the same kind of little lower sewer areas. Again, I don't know what they're called, basins, rain basins or whatever. And so he's almost ready to run John over, just as Arnold jumps off from the main road down there and cuts his way through and gets up to the kid and pulls the kid off the bike with one arm and puts him on the Harley, just at the same time where the semi runs over his little 4cc motorcycle or whatever. And now it's a pretty badass Harley semi chasing the Harley, and Arnold just, one arm shotgunning it and just doing the shotgun boom, and then doing the 360 rotation as he's able to reload, and just boom, boom, boom. And that was pretty sweet. And so he ends up, going over, the chase lasts for a couple minutes, so it's pretty sweet. They're just going under these undertows or load clearances, and ends up ripping the top off the semi, and they end up smashing the semi, just like right. It's one of those two. You got two choices. You got a left or a right, and then there's the big blockade. I don't know, right in the middle. Well, the semi runs right into that and blows up. We get a fantastic explosion, and of course, like anyone in a situation like that, when you're being chased down, you're gonna stop and watch the fire. So they stop, and they're just like, yeah, okay, well, movie's over. We got him. Well, no, tire comes rolling out of just a bare tire. It's on fire, and all of a sudden you just see the liquid metal guy walking, just no flames on him. And that was pretty sweet. Again, like I say, it's 1991 visual arts, and it was pretty sweet. Special effects, I guess I should say. But yeah, so then they're like, okay, well, this isn't over. And so then they take off, and I was like, yeah, that was pretty sweet. So that was so now we know who is who. We got the T800, which is the Arnold model, and then we got the T1000, which is the liquid metal. Now we're going to cut to the Psycho ward, and they're all hunkering down for the night, and this is the night Sarah decides that she wants to break out, which, okay, I mean, more power to you, but you are in a maximum facility there, so I really doubt it's as easy as stealing a set of keys, but she's made up her mind and she's going to get out. Well, at the same time, John has got the Terminator pulled off because he doesn't know what the hell's going on. His brain's going 8 million miles an hour, I can imagine, and he's like, pull over. I pull over, and so Arnold pulls over, and this is when we get some exposition, and he asks him, he's like, what the hell are you, this, that? And he's like, yes, I was sent back from the future to protect you. Who sent you back? You did. Okay, and so he's, the kid's trying to run away, but then Arnold grabs him, and he's squealing and screaming, and, he's, let me go, and then all of a sudden Arnold lets him go, and he falls on his ass. Well, as he's screaming, help, help, a couple bodybuilders are like, I don't know, minding their own business, and they're like, oh, we better go help. And so then as they're making their way over, John gets, he says, let go of me, and he lets go, and he's like, what'd you do that for? You told me to. He's like, so if I tell you what to do, you're going to do it? And he's like, yes. And just at that time, the bodybuilders come over, and so John's testing this theory, and he's, okay, we'll lift up one leg. And so Arnold lifts up one leg, and now he's standing there, and the guys come over, is everything okay? And John's like, what do you want, dickheads? And he's, oh, put your leg down, because, Arnold's still standing there with one leg lifted, and he's like, what? And then, hey, you little bastard, we should kick your ass. And so, Arnold's like, he's like, oh, well, yeah, my buddy here has got something to say about that. And so they get into a little tussle, and Arnold throws one of them, or he gets one of them by a chokehold, and the other one jumps on his back, and he throws the guy down, the first guy, and grabs the second guy and puts him over the hood of the car, just pulls out his pistol ready to shoot him, and John's like, oh my God, and, diverts it right at the last minute and shoots next to the guy, and there he's like, okay, run away, and looks at him, what did you do that for? And he's like, I'm a Terminator, and that's what I do. Okay, geez, well, you gotta promise me now you can never kill anyone again, which... That's going to be my new John voice, is the prepubescent, because he's pretty squeaky in this one. So he's like, yeah, you can't kill anybody. I don't want you. Okay, I can do that. Okay, so now I'm going to take the piss out of this. He's a Terminator. He's a killing machine. We've established he's a killing machine. Okay, I understand why. I get it. You want to be, obviously, for the movie, it can't just be a kill fest. This isn't like Rambo or anything where it's just blood and everything. But at the same time, it's like, that's what he does. He's a Terminator. That he's there to terminate people. But, okay, whatever. That was another thing I didn't realize until just now watching it, or, the recent watching was like, okay, so he's going to be Mr. Softy, and all of a sudden he's not going to kill anybody for the rest of the movie. I see how this is going to go, but yeah, so that's kind of so he's not going to kill anybody for the rest of this movie. Not to say there's going to be not bullets flying, but it's, as far as, gruesome deaths, yeah, we're pretty much done on the Arnold side of this. So, yeah. So now that they decide, okay, well, we got to go break out my mom, and so he's like, okay, well, now that's the plan. So they're going to go break out Sarah. Well, as luck would have it, that's the same night Sarah decides to break out. Well, that also happens to be the same night that the T-100... No, okay, before then, I'm getting a little too far ahead of myself here. So John is worried about his foster parents, and so he calls home to make sure that they're okay, and he wants to go get a couple things, and Arnold's like, no, your parents are already, if not close, they are now terminated. And he's like, oh, I gotta make sure. And so he calls the, and then you see the foster mom pick it up, and she's all nice and, hi, John, honey, where are you? Are you ready? You gonna come home? And he's like, I don't know, Sarah, how's everything? And the dog's barking in the background, and John puts the phone down a little bit. He's like, I don't know, she sounds a little off. She's not usually this nice. And so then Arnold grabs the phone, and being a Terminator, of course, having the automatic ability to learn every single piece of heavy machinery in the world, he is also a master mimic, and he grabs the phone, and he does the John voice. Hey, Sally, what's wrong with the... And he goes, what's your dog's name? And he's like, his name is... I don't know, I forget. Butters or something. Buford, I forget exactly. It's a dog's name, for fuck's sake. So he gives him one name. So then Arnold gets back on the line. Hey, Sarah, what's wrong with a completely other name? And so then the Terminator's like, oh yeah, he's just fine. Yeah, Jimmy is just fine. And so then Arnold hangs up the phone. He's like, yeah, those are not not foster parents. They are dead. And so now the foster parents are dead. So then it cuts to the other scene where the foster mom, and she's pissed, and the husband comes in bitching about the dog, actually, ironically enough. And as he's drinking milk out of the carton, it's like, you animal, how dare you? There's glasses in the cupboard, but no, you have to drink right out of the carton. So he's bitching about the dog, and then all of a sudden, off scene, you see the stepmom put up the arm, and then you hear the chink, and then it cuts back where he's got the knife, the liquid metal knife, right through the guy's. He's holding the milk carton, and then it's right through the back of his head. And I thought that was pretty cool. Which, again, that was the other thing Arnold explained to him, that yes, he is liquid metal. He can transform into any sort of cutting edge or any sort of knife. And John's like, well, why doesn't he just turn into a gun? No, too many parts. Why not a bomb? Oh no, he cannot. He can only do simple transformations into knives and stuff. And people, he can mimic people. So now, okay, so there's some exposition as far as what this T-1000 can do. So then we go back to the psych ward. Sarah's deciding she's ready to escape. So she's doing that just as the T-1000 ends up getting in there, takes the identity of one of the night watchmen, the guards. And so he's walking around, and so you see him walking on one side of the facility just as Arnold and the boy are running the other side of the facility, and then you see Sarah playing possum as far as trying to get out, and she ends up picking the lock. She ends up pulling one of the paper clips off one of her paperworks during one of her little, I don't know, evaluations or what have you, and ends up breaking off a piece of the broom handle and sneaks out and beats one of the orderlies. And all of a sudden she's, gets so far. I mean, she only gets so far, I should say. Ends up taking her psychiatrist as a hostage, fills up a syringe with plumbing cleaner and has it to his neck. And he's like, open this door, let me out. And so they're like, no, Sarah, take it easy. And so she kind of gets out, and she's running for the elevator. Well, just as she's running for the elevator door opens up, and here comes Schwarzenegger out in slow motion, and she's freaking out because, of course, her last interaction is with the original Terminator, and he tried to kill her in that movie. And so she's thinking, oh my God, because they show her pictures like, oh, this is, tell us where your son is, because these pictures were taken in 1984, and then these pictures were taken today in a mall, and it's the exact same. So she's like, oh my God, he's back. And so she fast forward to now, she sees him walking out of the elevator, slow motion, and you get the, and she's just like, oh, and then does the quick, turn around, try to get away. And well, she's runs into the orderlies, and they're taking her down, and the other Terminator's coming from the other direction. And then John comes in, and Arnold throws him off, and she's just freaking out because she just sees him, Arnold, and doesn't realize the boys. He's like, mom, and she's just like, oh, John. He's like, he's here to help. And just as they look over to the other Terminator, the liquid metal is standing there looking at him, and you just see him walk through these bars. That was pretty cool. And the psychiatrist is just like, standing there, gap mouth, not knowing what the hell he just saw. And so we have another shotgun battle between the two of them, and they end up running into the elevators as they, again, Robert Patrick's cardio kicks in. He's going full sprint down the hallway to try to intercept them as they're making their way into the elevator, and just does the whole arms into the clamps and open up the door, and Arnold shoots him in the face with the shotgun. And, again, he just splits in half. And, 1991, man, this movie, I'm going to say this movie's special effects definitely made it probably why people think this movie's better. I mean, it's a great movie, but it's still, it's effect heavy. It's all I'm going to say. But they're great effects. So, I mean, I'm not going to take the piss out of that. So, you're welcome. So they're riding the elevator down. Well, then, once the liquid metal guy, Terminator, reheals himself, he jumps on top of the elevator, and he's all shooting the knives down in there, and they're fighting him off, and they get out. And I think I've skipped over one of the funny lines is as Arnold and the boy are trying to get into the mental facility, the security guard by the main gate is like, "No, you can't come in. Visiting hours are here and there." And Arnold gets out and shoots him in the leg. And John's like, "What are you doing? You promised you wouldn't kill anybody." And Arnold's like, "He will live." And I'm thinking, I mean, yeah, he's still going to live, but now this dude's going to have a limp for the rest of his life. He just blew out his kneecap. I don't, I know life's precious and all of that, but sometimes, if it's going to be between getting shot in the face and instant death or getting blown out or getting both my kneecaps blown out, that's a tough call. But I don't know. You be the judge of that. So, but anyway, so he gets shot in the leg, but no, he's going to live. Okay, yeah, I guess good enough for me, good enough for you. I just thought that was kind of like, because it plays it again a little further on here in the movie. But so then they take off, and again, Robert's running after him and, catches him and does the whole classic, they're fighting and shooting and then end up shooting off because one of his hands had turned into a hook that he had penetrated the trunk cover and blows that off and does the old rolling down the road and you hear that clink, 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 clink. That was pretty cool. And then John sees the little piece there and takes it off and throws it on the road. And then it cuts to Robert Patrick walking up to it and it turning into, liquid metal and sucking back into him. And I was just like, all right. And so then it cuts to them. They finally get away and he kind of tells her the whole thing and she's like all pissed that, John came back for her and she was telling him that you're too important. You should have just let me go. And he's just like, well, I wanted to help you, Mom. And she's just, I mean, ungrateful. I get it, but still it could have been a little easier on the kid. I mean, he still is just a child. So, but she kind of makes him feel like he's, you stupid asshole. You should have just left me there. I would have been just fine myself. I would have fought off those 7 orderlies that had me down. Yeah. Okay. So he's just like, yeah, gosh, I don't know if, yeah. So then they go to some abandoned, gas station to kind of stitch up their wounds, and Arnold gives them some more, exposition as far as the whole Skynet and the time travel and this, that, and who did this and what did that. And so then Sarah is like, okay, well, I know somebody. And so they end up going to one of her friends that, you see him once and you don't really see him again. But of course this guy has the, bomb shelter full of guns and just arterial and artillery. I guess that's the word I'm looking for. But it's got it all ready to go, and so they stock up and they do their getting ready montage, which, if you've listened to us in the past, I love a good getting ready montage. It's not one of the better ones, but it's not bad. And then you see Arnold finding these big guns that will come into play a little further, and so then Sarah decides to, she's a badass. I mean, if you're looking for a female-led empowerment, but she's definitely the strong female character. This is how they did it without it becoming her, like nowadays, where the female character is just indestructible. She has no faults. She's just, everything is, right there. She can do whatever. This is a more grounded version of a strong female lead, a female character. She was strong, but she was vulnerable, and so she's getting ready to, she's thinking, well, if I go kill this guy who created Skynet, then Skynet will never be created, and we will just avert this whole Skynet takes over the world, kills human beings thing. And so she's kind of thinking about that. Well, then as she's thinking about it, she's drifting off and sees this dream where it's a playground with kids, and she sees a different version of herself, which I'm assuming is a young child John, little boy John, and they're just laughing it up and having a good time. And all of a sudden in the background you just see the nuclear strike hit and the fallout, and then they all catch fire, and that was pretty cool. Just everything is engulfed in flames, and she's just freaking out and just comes to just startled awake as she's, before this, carving on this guy's picnic table was just like, Sarah, it's great that you're over here and everything, but do you really need to carve up my picnic table? And so you'd think, maybe put your initials, but nope, she ends up writing, what was it? Man, I should have written it down, but I didn't. So she carved something in the picnic table, and no fate, I think is what it was. And then she takes off, and John's just like, well, I remember her telling me this one time where my dad told her this. And It's like, yeah, okay, that's kind of a stretch, but whatever. It's not enough for me to take the piss out of, but this is like, yeah, okay, whatever. But so she's taken off. She realizes, hey, if I go kill the Miles Dawson, the guy who created Skynet, I'm gonna do that. So then we cut to him. He's at home, and his little boy's playing with a remote control car, and you see Sarah in the it's night, and so she's getting all the sniper rifle ready to shoot, getting all set up, and so he's just clicking away on his computer, just doing whatever, and the little boy's playing around, and so then of course you hear the mom in the background, Billy, 5 more minutes and it's bedtime, and the kid, he's not listening, he don't care, and ends up driving his remote control into his dad's foot to make him flinch, just as the same time where Sarah shoots and misses him and just lays waste into his house, just going off, shooting just filling this place up with bullets, and busts in there and gets them all. The guys, or she ends up shooting him like in the shoulder. So she does get him once, and so he goes down, and little boy covers him and starts, leave my daddy alone. And the wife's not knowing what the hell's going on. Sarah comes in, puts the handgun right in his face, and then decides, well, I think I'll have a moment of clarity right here, and then maybe now I'll think about what I'm doing. Oh, maybe this isn't right, and decides not to kill this guy. And I was thinking, you just filled his... Okay, so here we are. Tim's going to take the piss out of this. You just shot 8 million rounds into this guy's house. You just took your automatic machine gun and just laid waste to everything. And now, when you see him in face to face, now you can't do it. And she starts crying and just like, oh my God, what have I done? I was like, well, you really committed a huge act of terrorism here. And now you're going to lose your nerve? Okay, whatever. And just as that, just as she's realized, no, I can't do this, that's when John and the Terminator show up. And so they kind of, bring her back to from her safe place or whatever. I don't know. I just felt like, well, you've come this far. You've been this committed, so you might as well just. But whatever. That's like. So anyway, I'm just gonna continue here. So then they're like, oh, well, what the hell's going on? Obviously, which you would think after your house has just been destroyed by machine gun fire and someone's standing over you with a pistol in your face, and then decides, no, maybe that's not what I want to do. You're probably going to have a couple questions for this person. Well, then John's like, okay, well, here, show him. Throws the pocket knife to Arnold, and that's when Arnold decides to cut off his forearm and expose the endoskeleton underneath, the skeletal hand, and immediately Miles realizes, oh my God, you are what I have in my thing. And so now they tell him the story. Granted, they don't go through it, so they kind of begin the story, and then that's when Miles is like, oh, you see his reaction at the end, and he's just like, oh, I think I'm going to be sick. And so then they decide to infiltrate his work to put a stop to it as well. And so they make their way over there. Well, of course, now it's after hours, and you just can't walk in there. And, so now they create a ruckus, and cops are called. And then as the liquid metal Terminator, he's on the police band. He hears what's going on. So now the building's being surrounded by police officers. The Miles can't get in because the security has been breached. And so now they don't know what the hell to do. And so then we have a big schmoz, and the cops start shooting, and then Arnold starts, like, they realize they can't get into the vault to destroy all the chip and the arm, and so, well, then Arnold's a machine, so he starts busting through walls, and he's like, okay, well, I'll create a diversion. So he's off, just laying waste to all the cops down below, kind of Die Hard style. I think of the Nakatomi Plaza when this is happening, because he's up above and they're all down below, and he's just pulls out the Gatling gun and just lets them all have it. And of course, John's like, remember, you promised me no killing. And so he just, just lays waste to everybody, and then does his little scanning and checking everybody. Okay, yes, they would all live. Like, all right. Okay, whatever. We're gonna keep marching on here. So he's doing that, and they finally get in there, and they grab everything, so the arm comes out. It's in this little glass case, and Miles is like, oh, you gotta be really careful with that. I get it out. And John's like, here, this is how we do it. Throws it on the ground, and it shatters into a million pieces. It's like, well, yeah, okay. There you go, kid. I mean, why would you be careful anyway? You're going to destroy them to begin with, so it's not like you. Oh, hold on, we're not going to get our deposit back on these glass enclosure cases if we destroy them. It's like, okay, if you see this building, it's been getting shot at for the last 25 minutes. So okay, whatever. But yeah, so that's how they get that stuff out of the glass. I was like, all right, go for it. And so now we got this whole thing going on, and then the liquid metal shows up, and he gets his way in there, and they kind of feel like, oh no, we're surrounded, and the cops start shooting tear gas in, and and then all of a sudden the cops make up to the floor that they're on as they're trying to escape, and another gun battle happens. Well, Miles gets shot, and he has the detonator because they're going to just blow up the whole facility, and so he gets shot. He goes down, realizes, yeah, that's pretty much, I'm not going to make it out any further than this. And so they, Sarah's kind of stuck in a little crossfire, and John's like, oh my God, how am I going to get her? Well, Arnold, being the machine, just busts through walls and grabs her, and like, okay, when the cops make their advancement to where Miles is, and he's literally doing his last gasps of life and holding this detonator above the detonation switch, and he's just, I don't know how much longer I can hold this. And they're like looking, and it takes them a minute, or a second, I should say, to realize, oh yeah, we better not be here when that happens. So they take off just as he dies, and boom, big explosion. That was pretty sweet. And so they get out, and yeah, so they're going down. They're going down to the lobby. That's what they're doing. And so they're in the lobby, and then again, there's multiple cops down there, and they're just shooting their tear gas, and Arnold is, they're like, oh my God, we're trapped in the elevator. And he's like, let me do something. And of course, then he gives us the, I'll be back. And so he, takes off and walks through the cloud of tear gas and shooting every officer in the knee on his way, and ends up getting one of the big police vans, and, drives it through the lobby, and they get in, and they take off. And of course, Arnold does it again. They will all live. It's just like, yeah, okay. And so then the other Terminator gets into one of the helicopters, which this was kind of funny because he morphs into, like, he drives the motorcycle up to the floor, realizes that they've taken off. So now he sees the helicopter hovering at that floor level, drives the motorcycle through the window onto the helicopter, and then does the whole turn into a big blob of liquid metal, and, forms himself as a human being in the pilot seat, and looks over at the pilot, and he's like, get out. And I'm thinking that's kind of uncharacteristic for him, because he's literally been killing everybody that he's been interacting with up to this point. But no, this one guy that were, 500, 600,000 feet up in the air, yeah, you just go ahead and jump out, you'll be fine. But I don't know, whatever. I thought that was kind of funny. So now he's after them in the helicopter. We get another kick-ass helicopter chase, and that was pretty sweet. And they end up blowing up. And so then they take off again, and they end up in a little Chevy S10, and he ends up in a big old semi again, a tanker truck, which is hauling liquid nitrogen, and another chase, and they end up in a smelter plant, which this one's actually manned, not like Cobra where they just show up and the plant's just running and nobody's there. No, there's workers there, and have a kick-ass truck wreck as the nitroglycerin just tips on its side and just goes everywhere, and the workers like, oh my God, get out. And so they take off, and so then Arnold jumps off, and the truck tanker's spraying nitroglycerin all over the place, or nitric oxide. It was something, I forget exactly what it was, but so basically, long story short, if that is too late here, but you see the liquid metal walking through this liquid nitrogen. There we go, and he's freezing. Each step he takes is a little harder to make, and so until finally one of his feet sticks to the ground and it breaks off at his ankle level, and he's just like, oh, and then the second one breaks off, and then he falls down as he's looking up at his hand, and then he fully freezes. Just okay, now he's frozen forever. And then Arnold, just does the old hasta la vista, baby, and shoots him with this handgun, and then he blows up into a million pieces. Okay. You got to find a way to squeeze in a couple more effects, I guess, at this point. And so, he shatters into a million pieces. Well, they're in a burning hot liquid metal plant. Like, they're literally in a smelter plant. And so the heat of all the molten metal is thawing him out. And then you just see the cool little blobs or little pools of liquid metal, slowly attract to one another, and then he comes back, and I was just like, it was cool. Don't get me wrong, but at the time I was like, well, I really did nothing as far as stopping him, or it's not the end. So, but that was pretty cool. So then anyway, they take off, they split up, and Arnold fights them and gets stuck, and there's so much things going on here that I'm probably going to leave out a lot of it, so I'm going to kind of gloss over a little bit. But the two Terminators end up fighting. Arnold ends up getting his arm stuck in the gears, and so now Robert Patrick's like, okay, now I got free will. And so then Sarah and John split up, and as John's taken off, terminate the liquid metal, finds Sarah and tells, oh, you call him back, as he's got one of his fingers turns into a big old long poking device, and he punctures her shoulder, and she's just like, no, you go to hell. I know that was my John there, but that was also Sarah at their moment of great stress there, and he's got the other one, his other hand, his pointer finger's turning into a big long poker, and he's hovering over his forehead, and he's like, you call him back now. And she's like, never, I'll never do this. And then all of a sudden it cuts to John, it cuts to Arnold, and he rips his arm out of the gears and picks up this pipe. And then you see John, and he hears his mom faintly calling for him. And so he goes running over to her, and she's all wounded. She's like, John. And then he does the, Mom, is that you? And she's all, yes, John, it's me. And just as he's ready to run over to her, you see a second Sarah Connor come out from behind, and she goes, get down, John. And then she shoots the first one, and then it's the Terminator just mimicking the mom, and he just blows his stomach, and all of a sudden turns around, and then that's when Arnold comes back, and he starts beating him with this rod, and that was pretty, again, they go at it, and then all of a sudden he grabs the shotgun, Sarah's shooting him, I'm sorry, before Arnold shows up. She's shooting him because they're on this platform, and down below is the big cauldron of molten metal. So she's shooting him, and every shot he's absorbing, but he's also taking another step back, and so she's like, oh, okay, and then finally gets to the last one. He's on the edge of the platform, and she's going for the last shot to shoot him in. Well, guess what? You're out of shotgun shells. And she's just like, oh. And then that's when Arnold shows up, and they start fighting, and then he ends up throwing him into the vat, and he's slow, just melts basically. And so every form he'd taken up throughout this movie shows up, and as they're thrashing in this metal, and then finally it just disperses into nothing. And so they're just like, oh God, thank God that's over. And Sarah's like, it's over. And John's like, okay, now we can go back to our normal lives. Like, okay, yeah, whatever. But before we needed to do that, Arnold's like, you need to throw the chip in there. And so John throws the chip from the original Terminator in, and now the hand, and so he throws that in there to erase any existence that he was ever there. And then they're like, okay, now it's over. And Arnold's like, no, one more chip needs to be destroyed. And John realizes it's the one in his head, and he's just, no, that's because he's grown attached to this Terminator. He's like the male figure John never had in his life, and he's crying, and so he like, oh, I can't. And I was like, no choice. And so they're like, okay, fine. So they slowly lower him into the vat, and of course it's very emotional, and just John's crying, and Sarah's just like, okay, well, they shake hands before this, and she's like, yes, we've become friends now. I'm like, well, it's a machine, but he has no idea of what happened the first time, but whatever. So anyway, it's a little bit of piss taken out. So I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm not going to go any further than that, but yeah. So then they lower him in, and slowly the music's playing, and you see his face. He's got his hand, he's holding his one remaining hand, I should say. He's holding onto the chain above his head, and he's into the vat. He's up to his nose, and you see his eyes, and then his head goes under, and then his hand slowly goes under, and then his last little motion is his hand goes from a fist into a thumbs up, and then slowly submerges into the vat of molten the molten metal, and boom, that's the end of it. And so then they stand there for a moment, taking stock of what just happened, and regrouping, and probably getting a quick breath before the excitement of whatever is going to continue. And fade to black, and we get Sarah's little last, I guess, outro where she's just like, the Terminators were conquered, and if life still did this, and whatever, and da 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 da. And then they, music hits again, and so then we get roll credits. So that was Terminator 2 Judgment Day. So okay, so I know I've taken the piss out of something. I'm going to take a little more piss out of some of out of this, just because it's kind of on the whole. Like I say, this movie was still great. It's still a fun movie. I don't dislike it by any means. Just because I take the piss out of it doesn't mean I'm like, oh, that movie was a big pile of shit. It's just things I've noticed. And now seeing Terminator and Terminator 2 so close together, I will say that, yes, Terminator, the original one, was a better film. Again, this one, Terminator 2, is definitely visually led, which they were awesome. And like I say, I just, here we are, 35 years later, and it still looks fucking great. The story is it's like I say, it's a sequel, but it's a lot of things I didn't notice happened in both movies. But, it's enough to not really, unless you watch them back to back, it's really not going to stick out to you. The thing that I thought after watching this, or even while watching this, was, why was the liquid metal there to kill Sarah? I mean, actually, now that I'm saying this, I kind of understand that he was probably hoping that John was going to show back up, which he eventually did. So, okay, I'm just going to leave that at that. But I had a whole thing of like, why the hell is he going after Sarah when he's looking after John? Well, okay, now I guess I just answered that myself. But the other thing that I thought that they could have done, and again, it's a movie, I get it. But instead of always trying to get John Connor or even Sarah while she was an adult, why didn't Skynet, if it's all-knowing and can have the ability to travel through time, why don't they go back to when Sarah was like born or conceived, or go after her as a little infant, or go after her parents, or go after, I mean, it's really endless. Like, they only go, oh, well, we can only get Sarah before she's pregnant with John. Oh, now we can only get John when he's this. And as we, because we do have, one more really movie for this line, I guess, timeline, Terminator 3, but I'll wait for that. I've only seen that movie like twice. But yeah, so instead of going to just those time frames, why don't they go back way back? Go back to when Sarah's mom and dad are about to meet, and maybe take out one of them, or take them both out, or I don't know. Again, that's just, maybe I'm taking the piss out of it too much. Maybe I should just relax and just accept it for what it is. But yeah, like I say, Terminator 2, I would highly check it out. All right, now it's time to go across the street and see what Mr. Stallone has to offer this week. And that is actually going to be the gem that is known as Rocky 5. Like always, we're going to start off with the Rotten Tomatoes for Rocky 5, and this may be a surprise to nobody, but it is considered rotten at a 32% with the critics, and an even rottener with the audience at a 31%. This movie came out in 1990. It is directed by John G. Avildsen, I believe. He was the director of the first one, and he came back to do number 5. Also, of course, it's starring Sylvester Stallone, Talia Shearer is back, Burt Young is back, Sage Stallone, he's also back as Rocky's son, Rocky Jr. We got Tommy Morrison as Tommy Gunn, and Burgess Meredith, yeah, easy for me to say, is back in a dream sequence of Mickey. And so, of course, this movie's budget was 30 to 42 million, depending on who you ask, and it made 120 million in the worldwide box office. Still made money, but wasn't the smash hit that Rocky 4 was. I do believe Rocky 4 made over $300 million a year. God, wouldn't that be nice? I believe that Rocky 4 made $300 million worldwide, maybe 4. Let's see here, 300 million for Rocky 4. So let's get started. Of course, this movie is like the last 3 sequels of the Rocky movies. It literally picks up with the boxing match between Ivan Drago and Rocky Balboa in Russia. Whereas the first The second, third, and fourth sequel opens up with just the fight from the movie. This one's kind of a little more cut, slow motion, kind of as the fight's going along, it's pausing in slow-mo and giving us obviously the credits. And where the last three sequels, they just kind of showed the fight, and then the movie kind of picked up after that. But this one, like I say, is a little different, a little slower, showing the pounding Rocky was taking, and then the comeback, and kind of shows a shot of Rocky getting continually punched in the face and the head, and which they kind of lean into for this movie. I guess the storyline of this movie. So we get that, and then we get obviously the end where Rocky wins the bout, knocks the Russian machine down, and wins and brings peace to the world. And so like where the fourth one ended, this one kind of picks right back up where that one that one ended, this one started. And so we see Rocky in the locker room after the fight, and he's just beaten up pretty good, and just obviously still has some trauma, I guess, from the fight, and realizes that something's not quite right. And they actually kind of made a special effort to show a shot where he's getting punched straight on in the face, which I don't remember from the fourth movie. I can't remember the last time when we talked about the fourth movie. I hadn't seen it since then. And again, if you listen to that one, Rocky IV was definitely not one of my favorites. It was kind of a cash grab type. The story was incredibly thin. Whole lot of montages for that. This one was he's sitting in the locker room, and he's just telling Paulie, "Oh, you need get Adrian. Something's not right." So she comes in, "Rocky, what's wrong?" And he's like, "I can't control my hands. They're still shaking. I don't feel right. I feel broken. Remember, Mickey said that, after a fight you don't feel good." And she's just kind of like, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh yeah, I don't feel good." And so we kind of planted the seeds for that. Hope that doesn't come back around and bite us in the ass. So then it cuts to them returning back to America. He's the American hero. He's flying on Air Russia, apparently, and they get off the plane, and they're greeted with fanfare, and the media's there, and so they're doing a press conference in the airport hangar, and that's when we're introduced to, I guess I don't know if I'd call him the antagonist in this movie, but he's definitely one of the bad guys. He's not even bad guy. I shouldn't even say that, but he is Richard Gant. He plays George Washington Duke, kind of a Don King type character, which, if you're around for the 90s and know who Don King was, he was the notorious boxing promoter that was kind of the Mike Tyson manager and set up all those Mike Tyson's fights. This is who that is in this movie. Comes in loudmouth. He's got the fur on, and Rocky, you ate this, and I got my guy here, Union Kane, and we challenge you to a boxing match, and you ain't nothing until you beat Kane. And Rocky's like, oh, leaning into it. And then Adrian, who in this movie kind of takes more of the authority type, maybe over the protector. There we go, the protector of Rocky. Is telling him, no, Rocky's retired. And again, I could be wrong, because apparently in this movie, he's still World Heavyweight Champion. I thought in Rocky IV that he relinquished the World Heavyweight Championship so he could go fight Ivan Drago. I don't know. I don't remember. Like I say, I don't even remember when we did that episode, but I didn't commit it to complete memory, but I always thought that he was not World Heavyweight Champion when he was fighting Ivan Drago, but apparently in Rocky V, he's still the World Heavyweight Champion. And the George Washington Duke is telling him, "Oh yeah, no, you're not nothing. You need to find my guy." And of course, the Union Kane fighters also jaw jacking him and saying, "You ain't nothing. You need to fight me." And Adrian, no, Rocky's retired, and Rocky's still kind of like, still feeling the effects of the fight. And they're like, "We just got off the plane. I'm not here to. He's done. He's retired. We're not going to do this anymore." And so they still kind of they jaw back and forth to one another. And so then they leave, and Rocky and the family, they go back home, and they are ready to live the quiet life. And Rocky's son is 14 in this, which again, I remember in Rocky IV, he was only like 9, but I guess the plane ride from Russia back to Philadelphia can age you about 5 years. So now he's 14. He's a 14-year-old boy. and they all go back to the cushy life that they had experienced. And well, it turns out while Rocky is just still recovering, and now he's he's contemplating retirement, I guess. Again, we go down the same storyline. He's a fighter. He wants to fight, and I think he's contemplated retirement in all Rocky movies, but this one kind of sticks. He kind of has no choice because they take him to the doctor, and the doctor examines him and realize, hey, you got brain damage, and you could potentially have one more fight, and that could be it, or one good punch, I guess. There we go. One good punch to the face or head or anywhere in that area, and you will not recover from that. So you need to retire. And Adrian's like, well, and he's like, well, I can't. I'm a fighter. And she's like, well, the thing about this, Rocky, is you can't get licensed anywhere, can you? And they're like, the doctor's like, that's right. We can't clear you to fight anymore. And so now he's conflicted with that. And then Adrian's like, oh, well, to the doctors, will you make sure that this news doesn't get out? It's because, we want our privacy. And they're like, oh, of course. Yeah, don't worry. Your secret's safe with us. And don't worry. And they're like, okay, thanks. And so then the family goes back to the mansion, and Rocky's doing some self examination or realization, I guess, that now his career is officially over, and he's not sure how to handle that. And well, then while he's doing this, you hear Paulie, which he still lives with them, which, hey, good for you, Paulie. You've run out this moocher. You're like going for the world record of the fucking moocher. And I don't know. Eventually, personally, myself, is I don't care, a sibling in law. You've got X number of days to get on your feet and find a place to live, especially if I'm a millionaire. I don't care if I got 20 rooms in this house that is empty. You're not going to be living in one of them for as long as you want. You got this many days, and the clock started 10 minutes ago. So, but Rocky's a little more laid back than I am. So he's hearing Paulie and Adrian fighting, and they're still fighting like they're 12, 13-year-old kids, just yelling at each other. And well, it turns out Paulie had inadvertently allowed a attorney to become the power of attorney for Rocky, and so they don't realize this Rocky doesn't realize this just yet, but Adrian's and him and Paulie are fighting about, well, now this attorney has stolen essentially the fortune that Rocky had amassed during his boxing career. And so Adrian was just yelling at Paulie, and Paulie was like, oh, I thought it was an insurance extension. And she's like, it's a power of attorney. He took all our money. And so now we have this crooked accountant who has essentially stolen all Rocky's money, and now Rocky's broke. And so they realize, oh, great, now we can't live this life of luxury. And so they go talking to a lawyer, and Adrian was under the impression that the house was completely paid for, but unfortunately that was not what happened, because the accountant did not make the payments, and so they have an outstanding balance on the house that they can no longer afford. And since Rocky can't fight, he can't make any more money, and now Rocky has to move the family literally back to Philadelphia. Back in I was actually waiting for the move to be back to the original slum apartment Rocky had lived in the first movie, but it's pretty close. It's not too far off, so they have to go back to the dirty streets of Philadelphia and live in a little apartment, and going from the luxury, the richness of luxury, back to the squalor of so it's the riches to rags story that you hear so much about. So now Rocky is, and then while they're finally all moved in, Rocky finds he's going through things, and because of course they have the estate sale, they sell everything, and Rocky ends up having the one trunk of old clothes, and pulls out literally the old hat from the first movie, and he's got the leather jacket and the gray sweatshirt, and so now he's just decked out in the original Rocky outfit. So it's like, yeah, I've come full circle. And she's like, well, why are you wearing those? And he's like, oh, they fit, they look good, and it's like, yeah, Rocky is now the everyman again. He's just like, okay, well, I guess if I'm poor, might as well just freaking look the part. So now that Rocky's back in the old neighborhood, he's walking around the old neighborhood, kind of just taking it all in, probably thinking to himself, I never thought I'd be back here, and drinking in the bar, and just happens to go outside, and all of a sudden he's literally standing across the street from the old Mickey's gym, and he goes inside, and then this is our flashback where he's training for the first fight, and Mickey's in there giving him the words of wisdom and telling him that, you're the great, you're as good as you can ever be, or, keep fighting or whatever. And this is where we get because the whole time Rocky's wearing this little boxing glove necklace, which, again, I don't remember from any of the movies, but while Rocky is watching this flashback in his mind, this is where Mick gives him that. He's like, this is Rocky Marciano's old cufflink, and he gave it to me, and now I'm giving it to you because you're like the son I never had, and you're going to do greatness, and you're the reason I'm still alive, because if you weren't here, I probably wouldn't be here, and which is all well and good. But if you remember Mickey from the other movies, he was never really this soft and fuzzy as he was in this flashback. And I guess anything to get Burgess Meredith back, but it's just this one scene, and and Rocky's just remembering this flashback with open-eyed admiration, and just like holding the little boxing glove cufflink / necklace now, and kind of like, oh yeah, Mickey, okay, yeah, your inspiration. Maybe I'll reopen the gym or whatever. And so we kind of set the seeds for this is maybe what he's going to do. Then we cut to Rocky and Paulie. They're again walking through the cold streets of Philadelphia, and he's as they're walking, you see a younger boxer kind of waiting for him, and he comes up to Rocky and introduces himself as Tommy Gunn, and he's like, yeah, Rocky, you were always my hero, and I wanted to be a boxer just like you, and I just wanted you, I wanted to come and show, or see if you would train me, and I want to be a professional, and I just got off the bus, and they're like, hey, old kid, I'm not, I'm not manager anymore, I don't do that. And so as Tommy's talking to him, that's when George Washington Duke just happens to pull up too, and again tries to persuade Rocky into getting in the ring and fighting his fighter, and they're just, he's just trying to egg him on, and again he's got the the full on male fur coat and all this, and just giving him shit and telling him, yeah, you ain't nothing until you beat my boy. And Rocky's like, hey, I'm retired, and then they like, oh okay, yeah, whatever. And then Rocky and Paulie walk off, and then Tommy goes up to the George Washington, and the boxing promoter's like, get away from me, kid, you ain't nothing, you ain't never gonna be nothing. And and then of course he yells back to Rocky, he's like, you're gonna regret this, Rocky, you're gonna regret this, you go fight my guy, and da 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 da. And it's like, yeah, okay, whatever. And so then it cuts to now little Rock, let's call him Rocky Jr. He is being taken to his first day of public school now, and Rocky's walking him there. And of course, it kind of has, and I've never been to Philadelphia, so I couldn't say, but it kind of looks like it's a projects type school in a project neighborhood. And Rocky was like, oh yeah, this is the school I went to. And the boy was just kind of like, well, we were rich and now we're poor, and do I really need to go here? And he's like, yeah, make good friends. And of course, the only entrance into the schoolyard is a cut open piece of chain link fence. So he climbs through there, and Rocky's like, hey, you'll do good, and you'll be good. And so kid looks back, and he's not sure of this, but so now he's enjoying his first day of school. And then we cut to like a flashback, well, not really a flashback, but then it shows us now that Union Kane, the boxer that George Washington Duke was managing, ends up winning the vacant world heavyweight title. But he still wants Rocky. He still wants to prove himself to Rocky, and he's just obnoxious about it, really. And Rocky's just like, no, And so then Rocky gets the idea, okay, maybe I will open up Mickey's gym again, and we'll get some, boxers, some, people that want to box. We'll train them. And so they're doing that, and that's when Tommy Gunn comes in, and he's like, come on, Rock, let me show you what I got. And he's like, I don't know, kid, I don't know if this will work for you. And he's like, come on, just, let's just spar a little bit. And so they're like, okay, hey, Bill, you want to spar this kid? And so they end up, like, yeah, sure. And so, of course, the sparring turns into almost like a violent beatdown where Tommy's just beating the shit out of the guy. Like, oh yeah, what you doing? Let's just spar him, man. You're not supposed to beat his ass. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry, I don't know, and I don't know any better. I'm just kind of a Oklahoma hayseed, and I don't get it. And of course now Rocky's kind of like, oh, geez, I don't know. This guy's got nothing. And so then Rocky talks more with Tommy, invites him over for dinner. And so they end up talking, and Tommy's just kind of giving him his backstory. You know, he had the violent father, and he was a victim of abuse. And so whenever he fights, then that's what he sees in the ring as his father. And that's kind of why he went a little too far in the sparring. And Rocky's kind of like, you know, feeling sympathy for the kid. And then he's kind of like, you know, yeah, maybe I will train you. And so he decides, oh, yeah, we'll be the trainers. And so Rocky invites him to stay. He's like, well, where are you staying? And Tommy's like, I don't know, I'll find a place to stay. And he's like, well, stay here. And he's like, no, I can't impose. And he's like, yeah, you can sleep in my kid's room. You know, you can sleep downstairs with Polly. And the Rocky son just kind of like, what? And Polly's like, what? And hey, you just sleep there, you know. And he's like, oh, okay. And so now the kid's starting to feel like pushed out a little bit. And so Rocky takes Tommy downstairs to kind of show him the whole, you know, this is where you're staying. And turns out during his free time, Rock Jr., Little Rock, had set up a little shrine of, you know, the memorabilia that Rocky was able to keep, and, you know, the old boxing posters and the magazines and the old world championship belt and all this. And Rocky's like, oh, wow, when did you have the time to do this? And he's like, oh, you know, I was just doing this. And, you know, and Rock's like, yeah, Tommy, check this out. You know, this is all like my career right here, you know. And so then, you know, obviously it's pretty cool. You know, kid builds a little shrine for you. But instead of, you know, Rocky showering his praise on the kid, he kind of just showers it on Tommy. And they end up becoming, you know, like friends. And then that's when we get our first montage of the training and the exercise and the running and all this. And while they're doing this, you know, cuts to Little Rock going back to school, I don't know, a couple days later, let's say. And as he's going there, of course, he's got, you know, the nice clothes, because he still has, you know, nice clothes from when his dad was rich. And a couple of the bullies, I guess, let's just call it what it is. A couple bullies decide that, hey, that's a nice coat. You know, you're wearing my coat. Why don't you give me my coat? You know, give me my coat. And Little Rock's like, no, this is my coat. And so they end up kicking his ass and take his coat from him and his lunch money. And, you know, Rock comes home with the black eye, and Rocky's like, you know, what happened? And he's like, you know, don't worry about it. And that's when Tommy's like, hey, you know, you need to learn how to fight. And Adrian's like, no, we don't fight here. We use our words. I'm not going to allow my child to fight. And Little Rock's just like, Dad, can you show me some things? He's like, no, son, you need to learn to use your words. And it's like, okay, that's all well and good and all, but sometimes you have to fight fire with fire. I'm just saying. So now Little Rock's getting neglected because he sees his dad, you know, showing Rocky, or not Rocky, but Tommy, you know, because again, we get another montage. We're in the gym, and he's showing him his the moves, and you see Little Rock kind of also, which it's kind of funny. He's in the gym doing the speed bag and stuff too, but he's got Paulie by his side, which, you know, I take Paulie as a trainer because, you know, he was there with Rocky, and so he kind of knows what he's talking about a little bit. And so we watch the development of Tommy Gunn, and then we kind of see the flashback, or not flash, but then the side shot of Little Rock also, you know, doing a little training himself, just because wants to be around his dad. You know, nothing wrong with that. And then we start getting the flashbacks, or the montage is starting to introduce some of the fights that Tommy's getting, and he's, you know, starting at the bottom, fighting in like warehouses and stuff, and just start beating people, and just you know, whatever you would assume a Rocky montage is at this point, that's pretty much what they do. Which, you know, again, you can't have a Rocky movie without at least one montage, and this one has like two. So it's you know, a Rocky montage. I don't know how else to explain it. So, well, then Union Kane, or I'm sorry, not Union Kane, but George Washington Duke sees what Rocky's doing, and he again challenges Rocky's new protege to a boxing match. And Rocky is like, I don't know, but then Tommy's like, well, yeah, I want to, you know, I want to be heavyweight champion of the world, you know, Rock, I want to be just like you. And Rocky's like, oh, you're not ready, kid. You're just not ready. He's going to just kick your ass. And so he's like, no, we can't do this. And so Tommy's just kind of like, okay, you know, yeah, whatever. And we cut to Little Rock. He's back in school one day, and he gets his lunch money stolen again. And it's funny because the two boys that were doing it, they had a girl with them, and she sees the boys beating up Little Rock, and after they kick his ass the second time and take his money, she comes up to him and just like, oh my God, I can't believe they did that again. And he's like, well, what about your boyfriend? She's like, oh, he's not my boyfriend. I want to be your friend now because I don't like this sort of thing. And so now he's kind of got a little girlfriend. And so then we got that. So Little Rock's been beaten up twice. And so we get another montage of Tommy doing some more training and some more fights. And Little Rock doing same thing too. And, and then as the second montage goes on, then you see Rocky getting more attached or getting closer. There we go. He's getting closer to Tommy Gunn. Just thinking, putting you would think, I don't know. So he's trying to train Tommy Gunn, but at the same time neglecting his son, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And so Little Rock is seeing this neglect, but then he's also doing some training on his own. So then it cuts to the one-arm push-ups, and Rock's training alongside Tommy Gunn, and they're getting Tommy Gunn just ready to move up the ladder. Maybe not to fight for the championship just yet, but he's training like that's the direction they're going. And so we see the two of them doing their one-arm push-ups in the ring, and then it cuts to Little Rock doing his one-arm push-ups in the ring too. And so it's like, second montage is complete, a couple more fights, and then we see the Union Cane doing a couple fights. So it's kind of like, oh, this is the route we're going, this is where we're heading. And so we get the build for the eventual fight, but then we cut to Little Rock. He's going to school again, and so now at this point we're meant to believe that the bullying is being, like, let's say daily, because I guess once you bully a kid, then you kind of do it more often. And so Little Rock, he's just had enough. He sees the two bullies. They're like, hey, give us your money, and he's just like, no, and as I should mention too, that this movie was 1990, and the soundtrack was still kind of 80s. I think the song, it wasn't anything familiar. It was almost like a whole new original song, but it was a go for it. Go for it. I can't do I don't want to try to do it because I would just butcher it, but that was essentially the whole chorus with the song. It was like, go for it. Go for it. And so Little Rock is all like, hey, Bully won. I don't know, that wasn't his name, but that's the name I'm assigning to him at this time. So he's like, hey, Bully won. You're wearing my jacket. And the bully comes up, is like, oh yeah, what are you going to do about it? And all of a sudden, they kind of jaw back and forth, and then Little Rock is like, go for it. And so he kicks the bully's ass and takes the jacket off him, and then he looks at the bully's friend, and the bully friend done the classic, oh, I'm not his friend, and runs away. And Little Rock's like, yeah, that's what I thought, and puts on his jacket, and the girl's like, oh my God, that was so amazing. That was so great. And he's like, yeah, I know. So now Little Rock is kind of, because he's being neglected by his dad, he's taking the path of, he's becoming a street hooligan, kind of. That's kind of where he's going. He's not doing like horrible things, but he's, definitely, he's not using his words. He definitely didn't use his words to beat that bully's ass. So now it's like Christmas time, and Rocky's got the family over, and Tommy's supposed to meet him over, and Rocky's all excited because he sees. I'm not gonna say. Let me say, they kind of made it like Tommy was the son Rocky wanted, but they didn't really go that far. Like maybe a little brother that Rocky was kind of. That was the bond they were maybe suggesting. He's just like, oh, look at this, I got another cufflink I want to give to Tommy, and Little Rock's sitting there with the girl, and it's funny because now the two bullies are like his friends. So I guess that's the thing. That's bully. That's what you do. You kick your bully's ass, and all of a sudden he's your friend. And so they're all hanging out watching Christmas Vacation. Actually, that's a timeless Christmas movie. So they're sitting there watching Christmas Vacation and eating popcorn, and Rocky's just like, hey, where's Tommy? I don't know. And so Adrian's decorating the tree, and she's like, oh, Rock, he'll be here eventually. He's a young man. And so while they're waiting for Tommy, Paulie shows up dressed up as Santa Claus. Of course, Rocky does I hear something on the roof. It sounds like reindeers, and the boys are like 14, which, that's to me a little old to still be playing that whole thing with kids at that age. But hey, give Rock credit, he tried. And so Paulie comes downstairs with the beard and the Santa suit, and the bully kid was just like, hey, look, there's 40 proof Santa. And I was like, thinking, well, this kid's definitely, I don't know. At that age, I had no idea what a 40 proof Santa would be, but of course he lives in Philadelphia, and I'm sure he whatever. I thought that was kind of funny, but it seemed a little young that he knew that reference. But yeah, so he dropped the 40 proof Santa on us, and Paulie's just like, which they kind of leaned Paulie a little more back into his alcoholism, a little harder in this one, where he still kind of had it under control a little bit the last couple movies, but nope, not this one. He's back. I'm not going to say a raging alcoholic, but he's not too far away from there. So while they're doing this, it cuts to George Washington Duke. He's got Tommy Gunn in his office, and he's promising him riches beyond his wildest dreams. And he's telling him that Rocky can only take him so far. And, if you want to fight real contenders, you got to come with me. And, he sees a good thing there, and he's offering him the world. And Tom's like, I don't know, Rocky's he's been there for me. He gave me the chance when no one else could. And then George Washington was like, yeah, you got to look at it this way. He's only going to take you so far. He's holding you back more than he's helping you. And I can get you the World Heavyweight Championship fight. And I can get you this. And of course, he's got the buxom redheaded lady there at the side. He's like, I can get you one of those too if you want, And he's just like, oh, okay, maybe. And then that's when one of George Washington Duke's associates or workers or whatever comes in and lays down you don't have a official contract with Rocky, do you? And Tommy's like, no, it's just a handshake agreement. And he's like, so if you come with us, he can still train you, but we can promote you, and we can get you the big contract fights, and you can make all the money. And so he's dangling all these riches in front of Tommy, and being, again, the Oklahoma City or the Oklahoma hayseed that he sees big dollar signs and realizes Rocky can only take him so far, and so he's like, considering it. And then all of a sudden it cuts to we're back at Rocky's house, and he's still like just wondering where the hell Tommy is. And Tommy shows up with the entourage, and he's got the George Washington Duke with him, and he's got the guys along with George Washington's associates are with him, and Tommy comes in with the buxom redhead, and Rocky's just kind of like not understanding. He's like, what's going on? And he's like, well, Rock, here's the deal. I don't think that we can, I don't think you've done for me what you can. I think I've only gone so far with you that I'm going to go, I guess basically what it is. And Rocky's just like, oh, no, kid, you got to do this the right way. You can't. And Tommy's just like, no, he wants the quick route. He wants the big money. He wants the prestige and all that. And not to mention he wants the big titty redhead. So he, leaves Rocky, and Rocky's just like, And so Little Rock's seeing all this, and he's pissed. And so he decides to leave with his friends and does the old classic. They're walking out. It's like, I don't know, middle of the night. And Adrian's like, where are you going? He's like, I'm going out. And he's like, when are you coming back? And he's like, when I want to. And so then we cut to them standing on a street corner, and Little Rock could pick up smoking and, wanting to do bad things. And Rocky realizes that he should have been paying more attention to his son, and goes and finds his son and has the heart-to-heart with him and tells him that he's trying to be a better person, and he'll be there, and we're the home team, and you're my number one son, and you're the best thing that ever happened to me, and this, that, and the other. And so then they're like, okay, well, we can go back to being whatever. And so then we cut to Tommy Gunn's got his heavyweight championship match. He's fighting Union Kane for the World Heavyweight Championship, and he just kicks his ass. I mean, it really was a one-sided fight. Just beats the shit out of him. Just first round knockout. Just boom, over, new champ. So then he's at a press conference, and of course they're doing the pomp and circumstance, and the press turns into like a pack of savage wild dogs, and they're just like, that was a paper. He's a paper champion. You're living in the shadow of Rocky. And George Washington Duke's like, no, this is the world heavyweight champion, and they're just giving it to him. The press is just giving it to Tommy Gunn. They're like, that wasn't even a real fight. You didn't even look like you broke a sweat. And Tommy's trying to justify, like, no, it was a good fight. And they're all over him. It was pretty brutal as far as the press goes, because they were on him, just calling him this, that, and the other. And it's kind of funny. I mean, I get it. It's a movie. You want to build up that whole, make him feel inadequate about winning it all, but they just rip into him, and they were just like, you will always be compared to Rocky, and Rocky he was in wars in the ring, and he had battles, and he did this, and you didn't do nothing, and you need to fight big names, and you're just fighting nobodies. And of course, they're going back and forth yelling, and finally the Tommy Gunn and George Washington leave, and Tommy's pissed, rightfully so, because he, just fucking became world heavyweight champion, and no, they don't really see it that way. And of course, George Washington just grabs Tommy and just like, there's only one way we can get this conversation put to bed, is you've got to challenge Rocky. George Washington's still in this we want to fight Rocky mind frame, and you got to get him in the ring. That's the only way to quiet these critics, is you got to beat the man. And the old guard against the new guard, the old wolf against the old lion against the new lion, and that's the only way we're gonna settle this. And so Tommy's just getting all pissed and furious, and he's like, oh yeah, this that, getting ready for that. And so then we cut to Rocky. He's hanging out in the bar and just playing pinball like you do when you're trying to waste a Saturday night. And it's kind of funny. Like, I feel like these series of events like happen. Like, he won the fight. That night, he's at the press conference. They're giving him shit. And then that's when Tommy decides to go find Rocky. And so that's what they do. They end up at the bar and come in, and they're just like, Rocky, we want you. You ain't nothing. We want you. We want the Rocky fight. And he's like, hey, no, I'm tired. I don't know what to tell you. And so they, Rocky turns the other cheek, and so they keep just jaw jacking him and just yelling at him. And then Paulie's had enough, and Paulie goes over there to try to do something, and Tommy just gives him the old left hook, and boom, Paulie goes down. And it's like, that's when Rocky says, oh my God. So he goes and checks on Paulie, and Paulie, his mouth's all bloody, and I guess that was enough. You can call him all the names in the world, but the second you punch out the old drunk brother-in-law, it's on. So okay, Rocky's just done. He's like, all right, yeah, so we're gonna fight. And they're like, George Washington's like, no, we got to get this in the ring. And he's like, no, my ring's out there. I'm a street fighter now. And he's just ready to go. He don't care. He's just like, let's throw down, old man. I want to kick your ass. And like, no. So George Washington's still trying to prevent this from happening in the street, but nope, it just turns into a bar fight. And so they're fighting, and of course, like always, Rocky's getting his ass kicked at the beginning of the fight, and he finally gets the tables turned a little bit, and they end up out in the street, and he kind of punches him and knocks him down. And which, I guess like any fight, you see the guy go down, and you're like, okay, that's good enough. So then Rocky turns his back and starts walking away, and of course he gets attacked again, and that's when Tommy lays the hurt on him, and just then all of a sudden Rocky's symptoms from the Drago fight kick in, where he gets the ringing in the ears, and he can't quite see straight, and you think, oh no, is this the end of Rocky as we know it? Has his brain damage been activated into high? What's going on? What in the world is happening? And so, Tommy's just putting the hurt on him, and Rocky's still just kind of like, and then Tommy feels like, okay, he's enough. And then that's when he decides, okay, I'm going to turn my back and walk away. And then we get the Rocky, gets the internal flashback series of events of the Rocky 3 where Mr. T kicks his ass, and then he's got Mickey, yelling at him, one more round, or did you hear the bell? You didn't hear the bell, it's not over. And we get that, and we get some more flashbacks of glorious days of fighting, I guess. And a couple minutes of that, and then Rocky has a realization where he's like, yeah, yo, Tommy, I ain't hear no bell. And so, of course, then they go back at it again, and Tommy charges him, and then all of a sudden Stallone does an old ankle takedown and does a couple more like wrestling moves and arm bars him and punches him in the back of the head, and just it was entertaining, but it was still kind of funny too. Where it's like, dude, you were a boxer. And of course, George Washington Duke had to make the proclamations like, he's a street fighter. You don't want to do this. You want to do this in the ring. This is his turf. This is where he's more comfortable at. And of course, yeah, and Rocky's, putting the hurt on him and just beating his ass. And as luck would have it, there was a news camera there with film and feed and a reporter ready to go. So then they're broadcasting it live on TV. And then we cut to Adrian putting dinner away or something. I don't know, but they're at home, and Little Rock comes running in and is like, Mom, Dad's on TV. She's like, what? Yeah, he's in a fight. Like, oh shit. So of course then they rush out to witness this whole fight going on. And so they're, it was a pretty decent fight for, what it was. And of course Rock ends up beating his ass and knocking him down, and then boom, we're done. And so he's just like, yeah, I still got it. And And so it plays the 90s version of the Rocky theme, and they kind of made some tweaks to it, which was, wasn't too bad. And so you kind of think, oh, this might be the end. And no, we need one more scene of him and Little Rock running up the famous stairs that Rocky had trained on in the first two movies. And they're running up it towards the Rocky statue, and Little Rock's got the lead, and he ends up winning. And he's like, come on, Dad. And he's just like, oh, man, these feel like they get longer every year, And then Rocky does one more proclamation of his, you're my son, and I'm proud of you, and I'm glad that, you decided to choose right over wrong or whatever. I mean, and not so many words. That's kind of what he's saying. And he's like, I got a present for you. And so he ends up giving Little Rock the Rocky Marciano boxing glove that is now in a necklace, the cufflink that he turned into a necklace. They hug, and we fade to black. And as the final credits are running, we get a slideshow of the Rocky movies from the past, where we start with Rocky 1, where he's, flirting with Adrian, and just think of all the classic moments from the first, two Rocky movies. That's what we get as a slideshow to finish up this movie. And then we fade to black, and you think, okay, well, that's the end of Rocky, which at that time, I kind of felt like that's what they wanted to do with it. But as we all know, that's not exactly the case. But, that was Rocky 5. So what I'm going to say about Rocky 5, I remember seeing it when it first came out. I didn't dislike it. I liked it because it was different. It wasn't the same, him going into the ring, getting the past glory, or overcoming. Well, he did kind of well, no, he didn't. I was going to say he overcame some bigger opponent, which he didn't really do that, but he did stand his ground. I liked that it wasn't just another boxing match where it was, a street fight at the end. That kind of caught me off guard. Having just watched it for this, I feel like this is maybe the only second or third time I've seen it. I think I only saw it, I want to say once. It felt, because I don't remember I remember the loss of the fortune. I just couldn't tell you how that happened. I knew he went from being rich to being poor. But I, again, didn't pay attention, I don't know. It was 1990, for God's sakes, and it was Rocky 5. And so I think at that time I was just kind of like, oh, God, I'm done with Rocky. But, I wanted to see it because the first three Rocky movies were all awesome. The fourth was okay. This one wasn't bad. I know this one does get a lot of hate. People definitely don't like this one. Obviously, from the Rotten Tomato scores, I think it was the lowest ranked out of all of them. But I think because this one is different, it's not bad at all. I like how they kind of leaned into I was going to say leaned into the Rocky's injuries, but he had injuries in all of them. So it's not like it was anything different. Like, oh, wow, he's got brain damage. Yeah, he had brain damage in all of them, if I remember correctly. So I was just like, okay. But it just wasn't, he has brain damage. Oh, he's going to have one more fight. For this one, again, I know there's one more Rocky, which I can honestly say as of this recording, I have not seen all the way through. I think when that one was presented to me, I was just over the idea of another Rocky movie, and so I'm just like, whatever. But when we get there, we will talk about it. But this one, I did not mind this one at all. I thought this one was actually pretty decent. I like I say, I like the differences of it. Between the, it's like it wasn't just another cookie cutter. Okay, we're gonna lose and then we're gonna find a way back, and then we're gonna all live in the past glories that we have, I guess. So I'm trying to say. Of course, I'm trying to do two things at once here, but that's not really working out for me. But no, like I say, this as far as Rocky movies go, it's not too bad. It's a decent little movie. Not too shabby. So I guess wrapping that up, and that's kind of why we're here, is now I need to think between the two movies which actor I feel did a better job. And for me, I'm going to go ahead and say it. I think I kind of like Sylvester Stallone a little better in this one. Terminator 2, you can't go wrong. But Arnold's done the Terminator. That's kind of what it is. You've seen it, and it wasn't bad by any means. But again, Rocky, you get more emotion I'm not going, like I say, we're not going by movies. Obviously Terminator 2 is a friggin' way better movie than Rocky 5 is, but for myself, because that's what this podcast is who I'm a bigger fan of, I'm going to say Sylvester Stallone, actually, because of his portrayal of Rocky and the overcomings that he had to deal with, and the loss of the fortune, and obviously the loss of the career that he'd been, that's all he knew. He was a fighter. He didn't know how to do anything else. So I felt Stallone, he did kind of feel a little like, when we were talking Rocky 3, he made Rocky a little more sophisticated than he was in the first two Rockies. In Rocky 4, again, he was a little more of the world traveler. This one, he kind of brought Rocky back down to just kind of being the guy on the docks who shakes people up for money to pay off loan sharks and whatever. And when he puts on that Rocky hat and the old leather jacket, it kind of brings him back down to, oh yeah, this is who I really am. But it wasn't, Then plus two, this movie was a little longer than Rocky 4, and it only had 2 montages, so they weren't bad. And Tommy Morrison, he was pretty decent because he was a real boxer. If you did not know that, he was a real boxer from the 90s. He has since passed away, but he did a pretty decent job as a acting as a boxer. Hey, go figure. Probably just being himself, but yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and lean towards Stallone in this one. So let's see. I'm going to go ahead and tally that up real quick. So it looks like on my Arnold side, I got 5 Arnolds, and this one makes my 8th Stallone. So, okay. Yeah. So 5, so that's 13. So we're 13 movies in. Yeah, sweet. That's not bad. So I'm going to go ahead and put the fucking, yeah, we're going to go ahead and put a fork in this one. Yeah. If I can spit that out properly. I'm looking at the next coming movies, and I'm probably, so as you may or may not know, we are kind of in a fluctuated position right now. We're trying to work on getting schedules lined up where we can continue doing these. I don't know how that's going to work going forward. So I've kind of decided to make the executive decision that these are going to go forward regardless, because I feel like I don't want to shortchange you as the listener, because I'm really doing this because you guys are listening, and I appreciate that. So I can't even express the gratitude I have for that, because this is just a hobby that I thought would be fun, and knowing that there's actually people listening to this just makes it that much more enjoyable for me to do. And so I don't want to say derail any momentum that we've had, and so I'm going to try to work around what we got going. Like I say, I mentioned it last week, where I still don't know. I'm hoping by next week I can kind of give you a more full-throated explanation of what's going to come in the future. And so as far as this podcast goes, until I can know otherwise, it'll probably just be a standalone with just me. Yeah, and I'm sorry. Hopefully they're not like, well, fuck this, I'm done listening to you. You're an idiot. Which, hey, I can't fucking put you down for that. So when you're right, you're right. So, but what I was thinking is, for the next episode, I may do another solo Stallone, because I'm looking at what we got here, and I kind of want to keep it even as far as what the Stallone and Schwarzenegger outcome is. And so I'm thinking we'll do 1, if not 2 solo Stallones. So that way, when the next Schwarzenegger comes along, which will actually be Last Action Hero, I figure Cliffhanger would be a better one. It's because the next Stallone's going to be Oscar, and after that, it's Stop or My Mom Will Shoot. So it's like, I've not seen either one of those movies. I do remember the notorious Stop or My Mom Will Shoot. I did buy that with the intention of watching it before doing these podcasts, but once I realized this podcast was becoming something that was happening, I waited. And then after that's Cliffhanger, and I'm like, you know what? I think Cliffhanger and Last Action Hero might line up a little better, because then we got, then we got some good ones after that. So yeah, we're definitely going to do the next one, Oscar, as a solo Stallone. So having said that, is I want to kind of churn these out a little quicker, because it's going to be a little easier to work around, say, one person's schedule as opposed to 2. But, just stay tuned. And, again, like I say, next week, maybe I can have a much more thorough explanation of what's going to happen. So, Yeah. So let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and end this episode on that. Like I say, thank you all for checking me out. If you've made it this far, you can always email me at arnoldorstallone@gmail.com. Of course, we are on the internet. You can check us out at the arnoldorstallonepodcast.com, as well as YouTube. There's some stuff on there. I mean, I could do more, but hey, I'm only one guy. So, but that's Arnold or Stallone podcast, I think. Just type in Arnold or Stallone podcast on YouTube. I'm sure something should pop up. We got some videos on there. I'm trying, so bear with me. So, so until next time, thank you for spending some time with me, and I will talk to you next week.